Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our special Zoom series made exclusively for our friends and supporters of the Downey Symphony Orchestra. I am Sharon Lavery, music director of this fine organization, and it's my pleasure to be with you today. Before I introduce our guest today, let me first just explain to you that the orchestra's string section has what we call principal players. So we've met the concertmaster, Carolyn Osborne, in an earlier session, and she's essentially the principal of the first violin section. And then we have a principal second violinist, a principal violist, a principal cellist, and a principal string bass player. And essentially, this principal is the leader of this particular section. And so today we are joined by the principal second violinist of our orchestra, Ms. Colleen Coomber, who has been a member of the orchestra. We were thinking probably at least about 25 years.
At least, I think
At
so.
least. And she's wonderful. She happens to be a dear friend of mine personally. So it's an extra pleasure for me to welcome her today. Please welcome Ms. Colleen Coomber.
Thank you. Wonderful to
Welcome,
be here.
Colleen.
So
Thank
excited.
thank you so much for joining us. I think it would be great. It's been nice that we've just started out talking a little bit about your background, where you're from, when you started playing, where you went to school, all that good stuff. And if somewhere you could include in there, when was it that you decided to play violin for a living?
Okay, well, going back a long ways, I am a native of Los Angeles, actually. I was born in literally Hollywood, um,
Whoa.
the Kaiser on Sunset. Um, but yeah, my parents, both Europeans, met here in California, and I was born then and basically grew up in sort of the mid Wilshire area, like around the Grove, Park La Brea, that area.
Hmm.
As a teenager, my parents moved to the South Bay, and then I grew up, went to Rolling Hills High School down in Palos Verdes, and then went straight to USC. Right on. So USC for my bachelor's and my master's in violin performance, where I studied with Alice Schoenfeld, who unfortunately recently passed away, but we miss her dearly. Um,
We sure
so
do.
yeah, the I don't know how I really well, I started playing when I was 6 years old. My dad was an amateur violinist and he played. He was not very good. He had horrible rhythm. Um, so, but he played and I just wanted to start at 6. And actually, my first teacher was a beautiful, wonderful woman who was in the LA Philharmonic back a long time ago, Lily Epstein. Um, and I just absolutely fell in love with orchestra playing. She would help me with my youth orchestra music, and I just kept going from there. And so when it came time to decide on a career, there really was no decision. I just kept playing the violin, went to USC, played more violin and in youth orchestras, and then just kind of moved on from there. So it was more like an evolution rather than a set decision to
Yeah,
become a professional.
that's I've heard this type of answer before. It just all happen naturally. We just don't make a decision. This is what I'm going to do. It just evolves, like you said.
It does. Yeah.
Um, when we met with Carolyn earlier, we talked a little bit about bowing, the decisions we make in the music, when to use a down bow, when to use an up bow.
Mm-hmm.
But we never actually talked about the bow itself. I was
Mm-hmm.
wondering maybe today you could just give us a little history lesson, the bow and its evolution, all that good stuff.
Well, of course, the violin you know all about. Probably most people know more about this than anything else.
Right.
This modern violin, this is modeled on the Stradivarius, which was the epitome of the modern violin, and it was developed in the 1600 or probably 15 late 1500s 1600s, and used gut strings for the longest time. Bows have been around for centuries. You can even trace them back as far as the Mongolians, the horse culture, because, and you think, well, that makes sense because this hair that they use is a horse hair.
Right.
A bow, and if you think about a bow, like bow and arrow, that's actually the shape that it was. It was more bowed out. If you think of the French word archer or arco in Italian, that's an arc or an arch. And so that bow was. And basically, they held the hair taut and played with the bow that way. It sort of evolved in shape over many years, and there was really no set standard for it. They were all different shapes. This one probably, I would say, dates about, it's not from there. This is a reproduction, about 1720. And you see it's not quite bowed out this much, but it is a little bit straighter, and it is quite a bit wider than a standard bow.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you can see it. The tips are very, very different.
Right.
And hold them up. Just the shape
Yeah.
of them.
I see.
So
Yep.
going from a more straight stick, and I found out just today also that the early bows were carved out of a piece of wood or a twig or a stick that they found, strung up with hair, and they would use a frog or just a wooden piece to insert in here to tighten the hair. So it was loose on the stick, but they'd have to manually hold it with a wooden piece that they would insert. Now that they're part of the bow, but they'd put a frog in there to tighten up the hair in order to play. So, and then holding the bow is a whole different thing. This is more of a straight stick, made from snake wood. It's kind of a flexible wood. Long about 1780 in France, Tort was the one who invented and standardized this modern bow, and it became more concave, longer. You see the difference in the length.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a little bit shorter. Bows, in the Baroque era, were used for dance music. A violinist was really not that important in the band of things. They were just kind of, like you said, fiddling around and doing a little bit of stuff there, here and there, basically for dances. And if you think, in the King's Court or even for folk dancing, they'd just be fiddling around. The stick was not that long. They were shorter, even still, because you've got your jaunty dance tunes, and I can probably show you an example of something.
While you're finding that, what's interesting is having to deal with actually holding the hair of the bow.
Yeah, they'd have like I said, a frog or just like a piece of wood that they would
Right.
insert in here, and that would tighten the hair. Then along at the end of the 16th century, the screw was invented to help us tighten the hair. Otherwise, because otherwise it would be loose like this. And
if it's too loose, you can't get the string to vibrate.
Right, it doesn't do anything. And I used to show my students to take the bow apart, and it's just a horse tail.
Sure.
And they love that. So
we love that too.
And then it makes sense that, it may come from Far Eastern cultures, like the nomads, and that they had the horses. And they had the Chinese instruments, like the erhu or something, that they would have their bow to play along with, something small and portable that they could take along with them. But yeah, so the bow has had many, many different incantations, you could say. It would just be a stick, and that they'd string it up with some hair, and then when they were done with it, just throw it away. So it wasn't really that important, and there was no standard bow that we have now until 1780 in France. So if you think of the Italians and Stradivarius for the violin, the modern look of the violin, for the modern Tourt, Tourte, Francois. So, oh, I was going to play. So, so your fiddle player, violinist, would basically be playing, some dance stuff. And with the shorter bow, it was more apt to a lighter, bouncier kind of feel. So So you've got that shorter, bouncier, and it's a more kind of a softer feel to it. You don't have to work so hard at trying to bounce the bow. When we try to play Baroque music on our modern bows, we have to work a whole lot harder to do that. And this last summer that we were on lockdown, I decided to buy myself this Baroque bow and try it with my Baroque music, Bach namely, and it's like night and day. It was so much easier to do things, and it just kind of changed my mind completely about it. Made so much more sense to read that. For instance, in Bach, we have lots of chords. It's like we have the solo Bach. And I remember at school just struggling through trying to play this, and there's a lot of string crossings, a lot of chords. I'll try it with a modern bow first, and then you can maybe see the difference.
Okay.
So, I can make it sound good. We can make it sound like that. But then trying it with a Baroque bow, it seems to fall much more naturally for the type of music that's written. So, especially crossing the strings with all the chords, I think the arch in the bow helps with that. Just to flow a little bit more naturally across the strings.
I noticed immediately the sound was a little bit lighter, like right from the very
yeah. That is that style back then. So the mechanics of the bow was kind of dictated also by the style of the music. Music was not built for a big concert hall. You were played in the small king's court, small chamber music, dances. Mostly, we were played for dance or inside the church. And the violin, again, was not really considered a solo instrument. It evolved that way, though, with the violin becoming in this shape, became more powerful. Also back then, our strings were made of gut.
Explain that.
Sheep gut. Guts, intestines were strong and tightened on the bow. Right now, we have strings that are made of steel, or they're still gut strings, but they're wrapped with steel. And that didn't come about until the Industrial Revolution, near the end of the 18th century. So, and as violin playing evolved, we sort of emerged as more of a solo instrument. And so then the bows became longer. the shape changed to give us more of sustaining power, more volume, and yeah, it just changed
I,
with the style of music. So as we get into more romantic music, we have that longer length of bow to play more lyrically rather than just the dance stuff. We can like sing with it.
I'm fascinated that you just purchased a Baroque bow this past summer. I wonder if you'll ever go back to using your modern bow when you do play Bach.
I don't know. I really enjoy learning and just finding a new angle, and it's kind of a revelation. Just the way I finger it, the way
Right.
I cross the strings with the bow. It just seems so much more easy now. Maybe because I studied it with a regular bow that I can play with more ease on the Baroque bow. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that could be. It's sort of like, you know, baseball players warming up there with two bats so that when they get to the one bat, it's
Mhm.
easy. Who knows? I mean, they're I definitely noticed
Yeah.
that lighter sound though right away.
Yeah. I mean, I can show something a little quicker. Um, and like I say, dance music was a big thing back in the 18th century, 1700s, when Bach was writing music. And so his sonatas and partitas, a lot of the movements are dance movements. We got minuets, we have a gavotte, we have a jig.
Hmm.
So that was all still based on what, the violinist was there as part of the band to play
Hmm.
either folk music in the square or, for the king's court. So you'd have his high art music was still based on folk kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, just fun stuff like that. And you've got a jig there at the last bit. So yeah, it bounces so easily. We don't have to work so hard as we would with this.
And
So
I also noticed, and we don't. This could be a conversation for a whole different session, but I also noticed very little vibrato.
yeah, hmm
And I don't know if you want to talk about that. There's a whole school of thought. Playing Bach, don't use too much vibrato. Does it have to do with the bow style? What?
it kind of does. That was the style back then. We used a lot more open strings as well.
Hmm.
And I remember back in school and learning it more in a more of a romantic way, using not so many open strings and shifting. And I've just turned full circle and do it just open, and it just sounds more Baroque. It
Now, just quickly explain to our audience because we don't know what open
okay.
strings mean. I mean, I do, but let's help our audience.
So our open strings are our strings without any fingers put down. That means they're open. So when we put a finger down, we stop the string, and we only make the string this long, and that's what raises the pitch. So, for instance, if I did it with the modern bow and the modern fingering, um, that is the E stopped. This is the open E. And you can hear a difference in the color of the string. It's much softer.
Big difference. Big
Yeah.
difference.
So, So I think when you play with the open strings with this bow, it's not as loud.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it just makes sense. Also, um, violin technique and when the style of the music changes too, we're more lyrical, playing more melodies. So, like when you get to Beethoven, um, by then this bow is in use, and we've got, instead of playing down here, we're doing more lyrical melodies. So that's when we're more of a soloist rather than just a member of the band playing rhythmic stuff.
And I see you using the full bow
Mhm.
with the modern bow, as
Right,
opposed to your Baroque bow. You kept it
right.
shorter.
With the difference in shape, we are able to play as strongly up here as we are down here.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's the most of the weight is at the bottom of the bow, and if you look at the balance
Mm-hmm.
of the bow,
Mm-hmm.
it's about a third.
Right.
It's the same with the modern bow, and it's absolutely balanced. Now, I said before that early bows were carved. These are actually taken from a piece of Pernambuco, which is Brazilian wood,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of being carved, it is bent, heated, and wet so that that they can mold it to that shape.
Interesting.
And so our balance point is still there at the lower point, but because of this shape, the proximity away from the hair, we have
Mm-hmm.
more force that we can use there at the tip. So I mean, you can, it's kind of hard without scratching, but here we have that leverage to be able to um,
Keep the sound full
sustain the
throughout.
sound
Mm-hmm.
completely through so that I can. We also have greater range of volume as well. And I talk about this with my students. Depending on where you are on the string
Mm-hmm.
and how much pressure you use and how
Mm-hmm.
much speed of bow, you get a whole entire range of color from this. You get a bigger, larger range of dynamics. So from
As
very,
a
very soft. So, and I can really, just dig into those chords with that modern bow. But that's not the style of Bach and before. This would be more like Brahms and the modern Tchaikovsky, everything. Just you can
and
really dig in.
and with Brahms, with Tchaikovsky, with some of the romantic composers, sometimes they would ask for something called sul tasto, which
Mm-hmm.
means over the fingerboard, to achieve that lighter sound,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just
Right.
show us real quick what that sul
Tosto.
tasto means.
Yeah, tosto means touching, and this is our fingerboard, and it's just a piece of ebony, and this is where our fingers land. We actually push the strings down with our fingers,
Mm-hmm.
and I show this to my students all the time. I'm shoving my hand up in their faces. Um, so, so tosto is when I'm. We generally play about in the middle, but we can play
Mm-hmm.
this whole range here, over the fingerboard and on the side of the hair. So we're basically only getting one hair.
Mm-hmm.
And you can play very, very little. If I were to try to put pressure there, that doesn't work.
No.
You can't. So you have to play with no pressure, very lightly and very slowly. If I were to move the bow too fast, it wouldn't catch. So I'm trying to make the string vibrate by pulling that. On the other end, here by the bridge, I can press. and then I get a really big sound. If I don't,
Well,
you got
let's
that real teeny sound. Yeah.
let's
So
go.
it's
Let's take it to the next step. So talk
sure.
about Ponticello. And I'm sorry, everybody, that I'm saying these fancy words, but she's now by the bridge. And so
Okay.
some composers ask for what's called Ponticello, and you're going to
Which
explain
is
that.
ponte is a bridge, and you're going to play on the bridge or very, very close to it. So if you have a ghostly movie or something very icy sounding, because you're not actually getting the vibrations, you're just sort of skating on the top, and you get that effect. So it's definitely an effect. But we
And
have a
when
huge range of everything in between.
and when you have an entire section, even the entire string section, in a, like you said, in a horror movie or in a
Mm-hmm.
scary movie, doing something Ponticello, yes.
Yeah, and of course, people who are fans of what's the movie Psycho
Psycho.
would go on the other side of the bridge. So yeah,
We have a
not
board,
terribly beautiful, but it does its purpose.
we have a board member, Mark Keller, who loves that soundtrack. We actually played it in the park
It's a
per his
fantastic
request.
string piece.
Oh, and let me tell you, some of those effects, the other side of the bridge, and when you have a whole string section doing it, it can sound eerie. Is an understatement.
Right. It is quite amazing what we can do. And so, yeah, the bow evolved. It became longer, it became stronger. Concert halls got bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So this was, you know, we were expected to project out to a larger audience. Now that we are in the spotlight as the soloist, concert halls became larger. Then the strings evolved as well. So Industrial Revolution, they started being wrapped in copper or steel.
Mm-hmm.
And the E is just a straight steel string. But in the 18th century, it's all gut strings.
And have you played in many orchestras where it's just specifically Baroque music? And if so, is everybody using a Baroque bow, or have we all just adjusted to playing in the style of Bach with a modern bow?
There are specific orchestras that in Los Angeles as well that have a focus only on that style of music, like Renaissance, early Baroque, early classical.
Early
They,
Haydn.
yeah, they do use gut strings,
Hmm.
and probably bows shaped like this. I'm sure they do. We also didn't have chin rests back then, so you just kind of hold it here. Now that we're, doing all sorts of things, we have something to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
But I have played Baroque music in regular orchestras. We just use our regular bow.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to adapt. So we end up playing a little bit more. We have to play a little bit more bouncy off, but it's actually harder to do. And I realized that when I got this one
Right.
it's just so much more or effortless to
Yeah.
do it with that one. But
Now,
we learned to do it this way. We all grew up with the standard bow.
every once in a while, we will be doing something very early Mozart, very early Haydn, and sometimes I notice holding the bow differently. Is that just preference, individual preference, or
Um,
is that does that help?
yeah, we hold the bow. That's one of the hardest things about playing the violin is the bow hold.
Mm-hmm.
It's not real tight. We carry it very, very gently, and it's a balance kind of thing. Some people with the Baroque style, to play it with a regular bow, we just kind of choke up a little bit to
Right.
make our bow shorter to match that other one. And so some people like to play it that way, and that
Right.
works. That's one way that you can get around not having a Baroque bow.
Interesting.
Right.
I loved what you said about way back when, that they would just take the horsehair with a stick, and then
Mm-hmm.
when they're done, they
It's
throw it
off.
away. And when you think about now, there are bows that cost more than three of my clarinets put together. I mean, it's incredible,
Right.
the evolution and how,
Yeah.
just talk a little bit about
Sure.
that.
Like a Tort bow now, like, I mean, of course, like with a Strad, a real Strad could be in the millions. A Tort bow, an original, could be a couple $100,000 just for the bow, and that's just for the stick. And when you buy a violin, a professional violin, you don't get the whole violin set with the violin, the bow, with the case and everything. It's all separately. And as professionals, we all have at least 3, 4 bows in our case. I have all sorts of different ones. The latest, greatest thing now is carbon fiber.
Hmm.
Because of course Brazilian wood is sort of endangered, is not being used as much anymore. But carbon fiber bow, with a synthetic material, is fantastic, and I really love this one. I bought it in order to play outdoor concerts, because our instruments are very susceptible to weather, for dryness and such, or dampness. But I love this bow. It's great, and the balance is wonderful, and it does just what it needs to do for a modern bow. So a lot of times we'll have, my violin case has space for 4 bows.
Wow.
Um, they're different weights. They're different balances. Some I like to use for Mozart. Some I prefer for Tchaikovsky. It
Interesting.
depends. It depends on weight. I prefer a heavy bow. Some people like lighter bows, so they're all different weights.
Well,
There's no one standard.
I know one of your favorite composers is Brahms.
Hmm.
I know that about Colleen. And so you probably have a Brahms bow.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'll play my Brahms with that bow for sure. Sonatas and
Interesting.
yeah.
So
So
we would not be picking up your Baroque bow to play Johannes Brahms.
no, we wouldn't. But I actually did have a concert that we recorded a couple of weeks ago. We played some Handel, and I took my Baroque bow and I used it. And it was great. So I think I'm definitely stuck on that now, for that. And really enjoying doing that at home with my, learning my Bach, or I should say, relearning my Bach from my USC days.
That's so fantastic. Our listeners are going to be so fascinated with this because we just don't know. We see a stick that goes up and down. We don't, we don't know how it's constructed, how it's evolved. It's just fascinating to us. So,
It's people talk about violinists and the left hand and everything, but I saw a quote today. It said, "Our left hand plays the notes, our bow hand plays the music, or makes the
nice,
music."
nice.
And so, you can turn it from just a series of notes into something that sings and sounds like the human voice that no one other instrument can copy.
I think maybe if we could shift a little bit and you could just talk about, because I know you're a member of the quintet that,
Yes.
or at least a lot of times you're a member of that quintet that goes around to our Downey schools and demonstrates for the kids. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about those concerts. I'm just curious, how do you feel about those?
I think it's great. And they love that trick when I pull the hair out loose and ask them what it is. And they're, oh, that's a horse. I make sure to tell them, though, that no horses were hurt in the making of this bow. It's just a
Yes.
haircut. But it's great fun. And I love to see the kids' faces and have them interact with us right there in front of us. And that's really mostly what I miss right now. Having been locked in, and playing solo for a whole year and not able to play for an audience, that's the biggest thing that I miss. Just to have the
Yeah.
kids watch their faces and just, when you demonstrate
Well,
something
there's
and they see
nothing.
the different instruments, and they just love to have us come there and talk with them. Um, yeah.
There's nothing like those children's concerts. I mean, we have, as professional musicians, we love giving concerts. We
Mhm.
love, love, love. But those playing for those kids, I can only speak to the concerts that we do in the Downey Theater for when we bus in all the third and fifth graders. But just to be in that setting, just in the middle of all, hundreds of kids,
Yeah.
you guys just playing and demonstrating must be really
They love it,
special.
and they high five us on the way out, and they say, "I play the whatever it is," and they're so excited to tell you all about that. My sister plays the violin, or one wonderful day. I this last time that we went, I don't remember which school it was. We had a set of um, children that were hearing or deaf, and a lot of them had hearing aids, and so but they came to the concert as well. So afterwards, I went up to them. It was probably six of them, and let them take my bow and bow on the strings. And then I had others put their hands here so they could feel the vibrations. Just about made me cry.
Wow.
The looks, the lights that just lit up in their faces was
Wow.
just beautiful.
What a gift that you provided them.
That was just
Wow.
very special. And that's one of my favorite memories. And I think I've done that a couple of times with that particular school where they had the kids that can't hear. They sat in the front row, but afterwards they could go up and touch my instrument. Or also
Wow.
the drums, we had Danielle doing the same thing, that they could feel the vibrations.
Wow.
So that really just got to them.
Well, once again, Downey Symphony is providing some special opportunities for these young players, and you just took it one step further. So that's I love that story.
Well,
Um,
that's why I do it. Not for the money or for the glory, but
mhm,
just because. And those are the moments that
mhm.
keep us in it, um, and keep us coming back.
That's right. And speaking of coming back, we are going to come back. We just all need to be patient, right?
Mm,
It's going to happen.
absolutely.
We'll be back. Maybe we could close today's session with you telling us what you love about playing in the Downey Symphony. I mean, you play everywhere. You play all over the place. I know you do because I
I
see you everywhere. I
do.
see you all everywhere. But just tell us, tell us why Downey.
Downey and well, my husband is in the Downey Symphony as well. We've both been in there for that long, and to me, it is a family orchestra. We've got a lot of married couples in there, um, and it's been the same people for the longest time, and it
Hmm.
just it feels like home going
Hmm.
down to and playing together, and um, just seeing how we go from Monday's first rehearsal to the concert is and how
Pretty
it evolves.
spectacular.
It is. It's amazing, and just the audience is so receptive and so appreciative, um, and I think they're probably my favorite audience. They just seem to really love it when we meet them afterwards, and they talk about how it touched them, and that's what we need. We feed off that audience.
The
So
connection.
Danny definitely is the family artist. Yeah, absolute connection. Again, I did a recording and it was broadcast, and we played a concert to an empty hall,
Yeah.
and I wasn't elated as I thought I'd be.
Yeah.
Um, I thought, oh wow, this is great, we're back and playing, but the audience wasn't there, and it was completely different, completely
Hmm.
wrong. It just didn't
Hmm.
fit. So I look forward to seeing them all again and all the
We
ladies that take care of us.
Yes, boy, do they take care of us. And just talking about that connection, I just think that Downey is so special that way. After concerts, the audience and the musicians and mingling, and there's always something. There's always
Mhm.
you know, a reception of some kind. And even if there isn't, the audience members, they just find a way to come back and
They do.
and chat with it. They love the musicians,
Hmm.
and I can tell you, I've asked this question to a bunch of you now, and it's that same reoccurring theme, that family feeling, that family
Hmm.
style ensemble that I
Right.
think makes Downey so special.
Yeah, definitely. It's for sure a family. And I know for many years when my kids were little, they'd come along to the Friday night rehearsal.
I remember.
and sit in the back room with the ladies who put out the cookies.
I remember. I
So,
literally watched your kids literally grow. I mean, all
and
those
they
rehearsals.
just loved coming and loved listening, and they were always welcome. And that was really great.
Well, Colleen, I cannot possibly thank you enough. It's just been so informative and interesting, and I so appreciate you, and I feel we are so lucky to have your leadership with the second violins, because you're in a tough spot. I mean, you're the leader of your section, but yet when the first violins decide to go this way, whether you like it or not, you got to go
Hmm.
this way. So you do it with such grace and professionalism, and I just hope you know how much I appreciate you and how much our orchestra appreciates you.
Oh, well, it's my very big honor to be a part of that organization and partners, with Carolyn and the rest of the string principals, and
Yeah.
we get it done, and we have a good time doing it too.
Well, thank you, Colleen Coomber. I want to remind everybody that even though we're not able to be physically with you right now, you can still show us your support. Easiest way is just go to our website. Right there on the home page, there's a support button. Just click on that. There's many ways to support. Doesn't all have to be financial. So please do that for us. And I want to also thank the Downey Symphonic Society Board of Directors for sponsoring and supporting these Zoom sessions with our fabulous musicians. And I look forward to our next session. And Colleen, thank you very much once again. And we'll
Thank
see
you.
everybody next time. Thank you.
Bye.